Welcome to today's episode, where we dive deep into the stories of two Native American warriors who lived through one of the most iconic and tragic encounters in American history, the Battle of the Little Bighorn. This battle, which took place in June of 1876, saw General George Armstrong Custer and his soldiers clashing with a coalition of native tribes united in resistance. Our narrative centers around two distinct native perspectives, Left Hand, an Arapaho warrior with deep personal ties to this event, and Flying Hawk, a warrior from the Oglala Sioux, who provides an unfiltered recount of the chaos and tragedy on the battlefield. Both Left Hand and Flying Hawk bring the events to life with clarity and conviction, capturing the sights, sounds, and emotions of that fateful day. Their voices, part of a timeless oral tradition, offer a rare and vivid perspective on this historic clash. Let's journey back to hear their accounts.
I come from what is now called the Powder River Basin, a place that has shaped me and where my father raised me. I am of mixed descent, with bloodlines running through both the Blackfoot and Cheyenne tribes, though I grew up and lived most of my life among the Arapaho people. From a young age, there was something peculiar about me. Unlike most in our tribe, I favored my left hand over my right. This unusual trait among the people earned me the name Left Hand. Since then, that name has traveled with me through every challenge and victory, a reminder of my difference and perhaps my destiny. Years later, I found myself thrust into one of the greatest battles against the white soldiers, the Battle of the Little Bighorn, where General Custer would meet his end. Only a few Arapaho warriors were present at this battle, but I was among them. Though time has passed, the memory is as fresh as if it were yesterday. We Arapaho warriors, along with others, had camped near Fort Robinson before setting out on a journey toward the Crowlands. Among us was a respected leader, Waterman. Some called him Well-Knowing One, or Sage. Our path led us north into the lands of the Crow when we encountered a small band of Sioux. These Sioux men told us their village was located near the Little Bighorn River and invited us to join them for a grand Sundance gathering. However, their trust was guarded. They suspected we might be scouts for the white soldiers and watched us closely. As we approached their encampment in the Little Bighorn Valley, several Sioux warriors intercepted us. They disarmed us, suspicious and cautious, and threatened to kill us, believing we were aiding the white soldiers. Tensions ran high, but by the following morning, Two Moon, a prominent Cheyenne chief, spoke with the Sioux chiefs, persuading them that we were not a threat. They returned our weapons, though they still watched us closely, keeping us in their sights. 2 days after we joined the Sioux camp, they decided to move further down the river. That day was calm, but the next day the air grew tense and we knew something was coming. Then, as the morning light spread over the valley, the battle began.
It was early, just as the sun was climbing. We could hear the sound of gunfire breaking the stillness. Major Reno's men had begun their attack on the southern end of the village, around 9 a.m., according to the sun's position. Their initial shots were few, scattered. But soon, panic swept through them as our warriors charged. They began to retreat, crossing the river in desperation. Many of them lost their horses, slipping and struggling through the water, forced to swim to safety. Climbing a high ridge, they hastily set up a barricade, though it did little to protect them. Encircled by the Sioux, their numbers quickly dwindled. Around midday, with the sun directly above, we heard gunfire erupt from the lower end of the village. More soldiers had arrived, signaling the battle was far from over. I moved across the village, joining a large group of Sioux and Cheyenne warriors to face the new wave of attackers. The excitement was fierce, almost overpowering, as we charged toward the soldiers. In the confusion, I saw a lone Indian on foot, wounded. Mistaking him for one of the Crow scouts allied with the white soldiers, I did not hesitate. I rode toward him with my lance, striking him down. Later, I learned he was one of our own, a Sioux warrior. It was a mistake, that weighed heavily on me, and his kin demanded justice for his death. Amid the turmoil, I spotted a wounded soldier lying on the ground. He saw me approach and extended his gun toward me in a silent plea. I accepted his weapon, choosing to spare him, but the Sioux warriors behind me had no such restraint. They shot him, and I took the cartridges from his belt. In that chaos, I caught a glimpse of General Custer himself. He wore his distinctive buckskin and stood tall, wielding 2 pistols as he fired at the advancing warriors. It was a brief moment, and after that, I did not see him again until much later, after the battle's end. As I walked among the bodies, there he lay, fallen among his men. By late afternoon, close to 3 p.m., every last white soldier was dead. Sioux warriors took scalps, and their women moved through, removing the soldiers' clothing.
After the fight, some Sioux women crossed the river to scavenge what they could from the bodies. I chose to stay in camp, not wanting to be part of what followed. My mind was still, processing the chaos and the fallen around us. Some warriors returned to confront the soldiers who had taken cover on a ridge near the southern end of the camp. I did not join them, preferring to remain among my Arapaho brothers. That night, rumors spread that more soldiers were advancing up the river, striking fear through the camp. Darkness fell, and under the cloak of night, 4 of us Arapaho sneaked to the pony herd, each quietly mounting a pony. We rode swiftly, the need for safety urging us on, back toward Fort Robinson, where we knew our people were waiting. During that battle, I wore only a shirt and breechcloth, my hair adorned with a simple talisman, a cross made from buffalo hide, held together with 2 feathers. Custer's decision to face the Sioux was reckless. His forces were dwarfed by the number of Sioux and Cheyenne, who covered the hills like grass. Only a few of their warriors fell, and those who did were laid to rest on the river's western bank. But for Custer's men, none survived.
Before the battle began, our camp stretched across the western bank of the Bighorn River in a wide valley. We watched as a distant cloud of dust rose, and some speculated it might be the soldiers. Then we saw it, a flag raised on a distant hill. Without warning, Reno's soldiers formed a long line and began firing into our camp. Bullets tore through our teepees, throwing our women and children into panic. They scrambled, clinging to their little ones, running in every direction to escape the onslaught. The attack came from the upper valley, where most of our people were camped, and we soon realized that these soldiers were just the beginning. Some soldiers fell as we retaliated, fleeing towards the forest and back across the river. The riverbank was steep, nearly 12 feet high, and as they scrambled up, hands and knees clawing at the earth, many were struck down. Those who made it across took cover, digging into the ground in desperation as we charged. The battle intensified. By then, every warrior had armed themselves, our bows, clubs, and rifles raised high. We charged the soldiers on the hill to the east and north, while Custer, separated and further to the north, made his way toward the lower end of our camp. Crazy Horse and I moved along the river, finding a ravine that would allow us to strike from behind. From there, we saw the soldiers, picking them off one by one as they stood their ground. The remaining soldiers tried to escape to join others along the ridge toward Custer. We charged, and they fell back, eventually rallying with Custer himself. As Custer approached the village's lower end, he was surrounded. His forces tried to hold their ground, dismounting in a last attempt to fight, but their efforts were futile. Their horses bolted down a ravine, straight into the village, where our women quickly captured them. Later, some of our people said they saw Custer riding a sorrel horse with white stockings as he moved toward the Bighorn. The battle's end came quickly once we surrounded them. The air filled with dust. Our war cries rang out, and within an hour, it was over. A few soldiers tried to flee, but Crazy Horse pursued, catching one about half a mile from where the others had fallen. As the dust settled, we dismounted, gathering rings, money, and watches from the fallen. We collected their guns and pistols, preparing for the next encounter. Then we turned back, gathering the women and children who had survived the chaos.
Through Left Hand and Flying Hawk's words, we gain a powerful view of the Battle of the Little Bighorn from a Native perspective, a tale of resilience, bravery, and loss. The battle marked a pivotal moment in history, remembered not only for its brutality, but for the unity and strength displayed by the tribes that defended their land. Thank you for joining us in this episode as we honored the voices of these warriors. Their stories remain a testament to the strength and spirit of the Native American people, echoing through history and into the present. Join us next time as we continue exploring stories that shaped our world.